So, if you're just joining me, we've just been looking at the Panasonic Lumix G9 Mark II. Now, this is an absolute monster of a camera. It's a micro four thirds camera, and it's in the same chassis as the Panasonic S5 II. Now, I've just did a live reaction to that video, and it's pretty mind-blowing camera. So I'm going to get into a little bit about why this excites me and what I think about the camera. So let me just move some of my things around a little bit. Let's have a look. Just trying to make sure if my live stream's still working, because my internet's been down a little bit today. Okay, so let's start off with the specifications. It's 25 megapixel sensor. It is not the same sensor as the GH6. A lot of people were saying that. There's some amazing things in this camera. It's awesome. Anyway, 5-axis in-body image stabilization, rated for 8 stops. On sensor phase detection, 779 phase detection points. 1.84 million articulating screen, that's about standard. 3.86 million viewfinder, that's really good, that's more than enough. 60 frames a second burst shooting, 60 frames a second burst shooting with AFC and electronic shutter, with 10 frames in mechanical shutter. That is just ridiculous. Now, recently, if you've been watching my channel, I actually brought an R7. I've used it for about a year because I massively got into wildlife photography, and unfortunately my Lumix cameras just couldn't keep up with contrast. But now they've introduced phase detect, things are starting to look a lot better. Now, my plan is to get an S1, or it was, until I got the S5 II, because I couldn't help myself. And now I might end up getting this G9, but I'm going to come on to that in a little bit. First, I'm going to finish off with the specs. 100 megapixel this is mad. Sorry, this is like crazy. 100 megapixels handheld high-res mode. 100 megapixels, that's mad. Up to 5.8K open gate. Thank you very much. All cameras need open gate now. This is amazing to see in there. We've also got that's going to be in 420, and it's also going to be we're also going to have cinema 4K 422 10-bit with vlog, full vlog. No purchase of any other codes or anything necessary. You have a full-size HDMI. Thank you, Canon. Take note. 390 shots of battery life. Oh, this is more exciting. SSD recording. So I've got the S5 II, so I can't do that. I'd need the X, but it's nice to see it on the G9. Dual UHS 2 card slot, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Okay, so let's get into a few things. Number one, it's the same body as the S5 II. However, it doesn't include the active cooling, but that is an exchange for what they have called a gyroscopic sensor. So if that is anything like what Sony and Blackmagic offer, maybe somewhere down the line we can feed that into a computer and get even more stabilized and accurate recording. This also feeds into the ability when your stabilization, when your image stabilization in camera itself. This basically allows you to have no crop, a little bit of a crop, 8% I believe they said, or a even more of an extreme crop, but it will help get rid of like warping in the corners at extreme wide angles. Now, what else caught my eye? As far as the body goes, I'm a little bit half and half. I really like the S5 II body, but I absolutely loved the original G9 body. It had a lot of character to it, and it just felt perfect. Had a really nice deep grip. The S5 II body, the S5 II's been, you know, a big seller, and from what they've been saying, there was a lot of sort of like colluding about from the G9 team and the S5 team, so I guess this makes sense. It's a great body, it's very comfortable, but I think the original G9 might just pip it ever so slightly for my personal preference. Now, the video sounds amazing. What they have heavily hinted at is because it hasn't got active calling, it's not going to be as like efficient as the S5 II or the GH6. I'm personally fine with that. I think if you're a content creator, a lot of your content, you're going to be fine. From what they were saying, they've been using it out in the desert, and it's been working really, really well. However, I'm sure there's going to be loads and loads of tests coming up as well. What else do we have? ProRes 422 and 422HQ to an SSD drive. That is phenomenal. Full-sized HDMI again. Thank you. We need to be done as an industry. Let's get rid of micro HDMI cables. Should be illegal. And the burst rates, absolutely insane. So 60 frames per second using the electronic shutter. Now what I'm obviously eager to see is, will there be any sort of jello effect? What is the refresh rate of that sensor going to be? Because if it's not fast enough, we will get some warping. That's an incredibly high number. On my R7, I only shoot at 15. I can shoot 30, but it's got a very, very bad rolling shutter. And also it becomes a lot to deal with. However, if you've posted up for like hours trying to get this shot of, I don't know, some rare bird, you're probably going to want to use it there. It also includes pre-burst shooting as well, which is such a useful tool if you've not used it. Basically, as you're holding the shutter down, before you even press it, it will start taking like photos, so you're much less likely to miss the shot. I think that's a really, really good and really, really useful feature. My personal opinion is I am now really stumped with what to do. My personal goal was to originally wait and hold my breath to get a Panasonic S1 Mark II. The S1 is probably my all-around sort of favourite camera I've ever used. It was a big, heavy camera, and I personally like that as a videographer because it just really helps with stabilisation. If you use older DSLRs, they're even bigger, to be fair, as well, so it weren't as bad as what people made out, apart from for wildlife photography, because when you paired it with the Sigma 150 to 600, oh, that was heavy. I was walking around Brownsea Island. We walked like 5 or 6 miles, and I was like, I can't walk no more. My mate had to go and get me a chocolate bar because I was just like done. Previously, I'd used the G9, I'd used the GH5S, and I was using those together, and I loved the G9 so much, but unfortunately, when it came to sort of low light photography, and I'm not, people who say, oh, people often talk about full frame, like you're going to shoot in the dark. You're not. When it gets dark enough, there's not enough detail there regardless. But it's at those twilight hours and those blue hours where you need to have decent sensor technology so you can actually get some clean photos in those conditions. And unfortunately, I found the G9 just wasn't really up to scratch, and so I kind of had to let that go, but it was like a tough decision to do. However, I love the size and the handling and the features in that camera. It's just, you know, I think next to my S1, probably my favourite sort of camera I've used. I absolutely loved it. Now, this camera, it also takes on the dynamic range boost feature from the GH6. However, they have improved it. So that means you can now use it from ISO 100 and up. Now, going back to what I was just saying about shooting low light, one of my big concerns was, how is this going to perform in low light? And I'm still eager to find out. But knowing that they have improved the dynamic range boost feature even more at lower ISO speeds is a bit of a relief. My biggest concern with this camera is the burst rates are so high. It's, why have they gone with SD cards? I know they're expensive, but they have come down in price considerably, and they are so much better for photographing. But sorry, they're so much better for photography, especially for wildlife. I think CFX type B cards would have been a much better choice. It's a shame they couldn't do like a Sony and have like both options in there. But you know, a couple of V90 cards and hopefully we'll be okay. But that is a lot of data to write to a card in a very short amount of time. Outside of that, my initial reactions are it is awesome, and I'm not sure if I'm going to wait for an S1 Mark II, because honestly, I originally even said I was going to get an S5 2X, but the deals on the S5 II were so good. I've got the S5 II, and occasionally I do get, I don't know if it's buyer's remorse or something, where I think, well, I want the S5 2X actually because of all the extra features. And maybe I'll end up with that one day. I'm not sure. I just know at the time I was saving like 700 and something pounds on this camera, which is a considerable difference. And I also find that a lot of the features on that X I probably wouldn't use. The only thing I would really like is the tether. Anyway, without going off on too much of a tangent, that means I'm very happy with the S5 II. Which could become my A camera. Typically, if I'm going to have two cameras, I make sure they're very closely matched, so two full frame cameras. But I've had a change of heart this year because of my love for wildlife photography. I don't put clients' needs 100% ahead of mine, and because technology's got better and it's easier to match cameras, and because I've got better, I don't really mind having two different size sensors. So I've got this R7, which is a fantastic camera, and I've got some great lenses for, and realistically is more than enough. But I can't forget my amazing experiences from having a G9 camera. It was just great. It was just lacking autofocus and low light performance, but having those that reach in such a small sort of setup was amazing. A lot of people will talk about the benefits of full frame, and yes, you have to times whatever lens you stick on by 2, and your and technically you also do that to your exposure too. So for example, if it was an f2, then it's technically like an f4. But to me, when I hear people talk, it often feels like when someone is learning to drive, and now if you've been driving for like 10 years and you're very experienced, you could probably forget half the stuff that's on the test, but you have the experience to know how to drive and what to look out for, and you're going to be a much better driver versus someone who could probably tell you every question they've just rehearsed for this for the practical test, but have got no idea of actually what it's like being behind the wheel. And what I mean by that is, what should drive your decision to buy a camera should be what is bringing you joy and inspiring you to go out and shoot, because I promise you will work around whatever flaws are with that camera to make it work. Now, sometimes there are limits, so doing wildlife photography on an S1, for example, and G9, because of that contrast detect, you were impaired, and that's a solid time where you do have to sort of make a choice, which is why I ended up getting an R7. But that R7 didn't replace the joy of using those cameras, so I might get this camera, but that does largely rely on sort of like price and everything. So there's that 100 to 400 lens which has also been announced, and that's probably going to be quite pricey, although I could use a version 1 of that. So it might add up, and it might not be financially feasible for me to do that. I really do love using my R7 as well. It's a very powerful camera. It's just that I clearly have a little bit of a bias for Lumix cameras, which is fine. So what are my overall thoughts on this? I think the G9 Mark II is a monster. I do not care if you shoot full frame. I've shot with everything. I've shot with studio broadcast cameras. I've shot on tape. I've shot on APS-C and full frame. I do not care. I only care what inspires me. I only care about what inspires me to go out and shoot. And on that principle, I am very seriously considering getting that G9II. I just think that sounds great. but more research is needed. I need to see how it performs in those lower light conditions. I need to see how well it is, how well it acquires the targets, and how well all the new autofocus features work and video features work. If it's up to scratch, then I might go and make that choice. I think I'd be happy with a G9II and an S5 II. At some point, I love kit and I like buying kit, but at some point, from a professional standpoint, you need to stop buying kit. And maybe I'm saying that to myself. We live in a time at the moment where new things are released every single month, and it can feel like your kit is outdated. It's not. I was getting amazing results from the S5 I, and that was a 4-year-old camera. The only reason I updated is because of the autofocus. If it already had that autofocus, the face detect, I wouldn't have upgraded. So that was a hard line where it was like, yeah, I'm going to benefit from that, especially if I'm doing stuff like this. So all in all, I'll take it into very serious consideration, do a lot more research, and have more videos for you soon. As for now, I think I'm just going to go and geek out. But I think that's going to be it for this live stream. I don't know how well this has gone. I haven't live streamed in like 4 or 5 years. I completely forgot how to use OBS. And then I decided to do a live stream an hour before the thing was going live. And I was like, oh, I forgot how to do all of this. So yeah, let me know how it went in the comments below. If you like this video, let me know. And maybe I'll do some more live streams, but a little bit more polished. And I'm going to catch you all next time. I'm going to figure out how to turn this off now. Watch this awkwardness now. Let's see what happens. Right, stop stream presumably. So I'll catch you all next time.